Hi everyone, and welcome to our last week of Harness Your Health. We are so excited that we've made it this far. You should be all congratulating yourself that you have completed this program. Investing this type of time in yourself is not a common thing, and I hope you have realized that this small investment in your health will multiply tenfold when you start to realize how it impacts the other aspects of your life and the people in your life. So this week is wrap up and next steps. So this week our objectives are to state 1 to 2 changes you've made, state 1 to 2 goals for the future, state the primary challenges that you were or were not able to overcome, and discuss the best and worst aspects of the course. So we are going to celebrate your success. So during the session, we'll probably actually pull this slideshow up just to prompt some discussion, but look at this picture and think about that being you. You've made it this far, and we want to hear all of your wins. And so sometimes it can be hard to think on the spot. So since you're watching this in advance, please jot down some of the things that have been your successes. And I encourage you to, brag it up. So we want to be sure there's time for everyone. So you don't need to necessarily go into explicit details on every success, because I'm sure there are so many that everyone's had. But instead, think of the high points. You don't have to rationalize or justify, but, praise for what you have done and feel confident in telling us. So how did you get here? Let's talk about this journey. So what were some of the challenges you faced? How did you overcome them? What setbacks did you encounter, and how did you reframe them for success? Who helped you along this journey, and what motivated you when you were stuck? These are all great questions to reflect on in advance, because again, when we get there, we have so many emotions and thoughts, and it can be hard to really think about these things. So I would encourage you to reflect on these, maybe do a little journaling between now and when our session is, to see what answers you have to these specific questions. So we want to talk a little bit about relapse prevention, since we are at the end of our program and everyone has made some kind of significant lifestyle change that is at risk of relapse. And I'm not sure if you recall from week 6 that we talked about lapse and relapse. And so a lapse is a brief return to an old unhelpful behavior, where a relapse is a complete return to an old unhelpful behavior. So an example could be if you were smoking and you quit smoking. A lapse is when you have 1 cigarette. You did it briefly, and it was not the desired behavior, but you only did it once. As opposed to a relapse would be if you went through a carton of cigarettes. So that would suggest that maybe you're completely back to your old ways. And so we really want to make sure that we're identifying the difference between these and being aware, because when we have a lapse, it is common that we get very upset with ourselves, and then we berate ourselves and say how silly we are and ridiculous and foolish, etc. And then that triggers us to continue to lapse. And so we want to think about how we talk to ourselves. So let's say you've done a great job with mindful and intuitive eating, but you found yourself snacking at night. Let's say for a week you've been having snacks at night. And initially you thought you were really hungry, but now you're realizing you're not actually checking in, and that it's more of a habit. So notice the difference in how these two forms of self-talk are. This seems to be more of a habit that I need. I can change my habits. I'm going to journal and reflect on what is triggering this, and then make a plan for how to start changing this habit. I can do this. Or saying, well, I guess all that behavior change was for nothing. I blew it again. I can never stick to a diet or a plan. So which of those two approaches shows self-compassion, and which will result in the outcome you desire? We often think that the first approach, well, sounds good, is kind of being too soft. We need to be hard on ourselves, right? That's the only way things improve. If you're soft, you're just going to get pushed over and you're never going to make anything happen. But I would argue when you're too hard on yourself, you actually get yourself into a rut and you get more stuck. So self-compassion, even though people may feel like it is soft, or wussy, or it's just not the right approach to making real change, I would argue it is the only approach to making change, because when we're too hard on ourselves, it brings up shame-provoking, and it brings up behaviors that are unhelpful and behaviors that have gotten us to where we are right now. So we need to do something different. Let's say you've been someone who always stood the hard line and held yourself to a high standard, and if it went wrong, you just berated yourself. How has that served you? Has that ever resulted in the outcome you want? Of course not. It doesn't, because it's not showing compassion. So some tips for relapse prevention. One big tip is to create a relapse prevention plan. So what triggers have you experienced in the past? What internal or external triggers do you anticipate experiencing at this time? And what can you do if a lapse occurs? How can you stop it from becoming a relapse? And so some tips for prevention are journaling, your physical environment, so kind of setting your environment up in a way that will promote success. This could be like not buying certain foods that you don't really need in the house, setting your exercise clothes out on the floor every morning in advance, or doing things in your environment so the decision you desire is the easy decision. It could be around eating a healthy diet, getting enough sleep, taking care of yourself through exercise, doing self-care, whatever that is for you specifically, and monitoring and managing your mental health. So in real time, what can you do? So in real time, you might notice that you just kind of like don't think, and next thing you know, you've already lapsed. So these are some tips of what you can do to try to prevent the lapse. So HALT is ask yourself, before you do anything, just pause. You know you're about to open up that pantry, and before you touch the door, back up, ask yourself, am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Am I tired? And really reflect on those. And you might realize you're not hungry. You're lonely. You had a horrible day at work. Your best friend is not responding to your text messages and you think that he hates you, and you just feel completely alone. And really what you're doing is you're trying to eat to get rid of that feeling and having to think about what happened today. The next one is sober. So this comes from alcohol use in general, but you can use this tactic with any kind of behavior change. So sober is to stop in the moment, right before you're about to grab whatever you're going to grab or go where you're going to go. Stop. Observe. Observe yourself. Observe the world around you. What is happening now? Breathe. So you can do some of those 4, 7, 8 breaths described earlier in the sessions. Expand. So think outside of this exact moment. Why am I really doing this? So you see that you're about to grab the cookies. You start breathing. You start reflecting. You expand your awareness to other things that are influencing this behavior, and then you respond the way that you need. Let the movie play out. So this would be pausing again, pausing. See how that's the common theme, all right? Don't act, wait. Pause and close your eyes, and then think in your mind, what will happen if you do this behavior? What will the outcome be? Do you see yourself feeling any better after you ate those cookies than you do now? Do you see yourself eating just 2 cookies, or do you see yourself eating a whole sleeve of cookies? So sit there and think, what will happen if I open this pantry door? And then think, what do I want to happen right now? And play that story out and figure out how they are different and how you can make your story become the second one. Call a friend. Even, again, it's the act of pausing. So instead of going to the pantry, step back. No one's going to die if they have to wait 10 minutes to eat. Call a friend and just see how they're doing. And you might realize when it's off your mind, maybe you actually don't need to eat. Then you could consider just waiting 5 minutes before acting. Set an alarm. And if you set a dial or a timer that's visible, it'll actually allow you to see there is an end. So sometimes, I don't know if any of you have done exercise or spin classes before where you're working really hard and you have no idea how long you need to do this effort for. And you think to yourself, I can do this if it's for 30 seconds. And then in your mind, you're like, I feel like it's been 2 minutes. How much longer do I have? And you just sort of get into this spiral worrying that you can't handle it. If you set a timer and you know it's 5 minutes, then walk away and you know it's going to go off when it's time. And then you can act. Okay, maybe you do want the cookies and you can have them then, but you waited, so you gave yourself a moment to assess and determine if this was right for you. And then the last is to be curious. So think about, what is it that I really want right now? What do you think I am trying to solve by doing this? Ask yourself what it is that this activity or behavior, how it will serve you. And again, think of what those thoughts are. And from week 2, we talked about the model briefly, where your thoughts determine determine your feelings, which determine your actions, and then your results. So what thoughts are you having, and how do you feel about those? And is that serving you? Or do you maybe need to work through a model and see how that serves you? You see if there's a way you can shift your thinking slightly so that you aren't feeling how you feel now, or you're not kind of causing this self-fulfilling prophecy about how things can be. So next steps, which we will discuss at the session, are goals. We all want to hear each other's goals, so write down a few of what your next goals will be. And then we're going to wrap up. So again, we're going to talk about how everything went, what you learned, what to do next. We'd love to hear your thoughts about the program. We are going to give you, so in your packet there's a handout about remission or relapse prevention and goal setting. And then we also want you to fill out a survey about how this program went. Next week is your week. You won't be coming here anymore. You may have a follow-up with your provider to just do some more lab work and see how things are going, but we will not have group. So thank you all for participating. We are so grateful for all of the time and energy you have put into this group. We thank you so much, and all of the future patients who will benefit from this program thank you, because you have helped provide valuable feedback that has allowed us to tweak this program so it can be the most rewarding and beneficial for future patients. So thank you.